Thank you for attending this brief webinar. Today we are going to take a closer look on how to use statistical analysis when you are conducting a quantitative research. And we are going to illustrate statistical analysis. Few examples using SPSS, which all of you are familiar with, and used it by many students and universities around the world. So we are going to address these 5 items. We are not going to go into deeper because we just wanted to highlight what you need to in order to analyze quantitative research data. So first of all, we are going to take an overview of the overall quantitative research process. And then in the next point, we are going to also see what sampling techniques and what data collection techniques are used in quantitative research. And then our main point in this webinar is to understand the different data analysis methods, and also take one case example, and see how that analysis is run and how it's interpreted when you are using SPSS. And then we wrap up with, of course, questions. You can ask questions anytime, and then we wrap up. So let's start the first one and have an overview of a typical quantitative research process. So the quantitative research process typically goes through all these processes. The starting point is when you select your research topic. Of course, there are different sources where you can find a suitable topic for your area. Those sources might include published articles, published research articles that was conducted before yours, and then you can find those things in on the web or on your university library or on the open Google Scholar. You can also get those source topic. The sources you can get research topic may also include magazines and also in everyday situations that you might encounter. Every day we are faced with problems, and then you can raise that problem and convert it into a research topic where you can study. For example, every day you may encounter people using social media like TikTok or Twitter, and then you may see that because of the increased usage of those social media icons, productivity at your workplace has reduced. So maybe you may study the effect of social media on employee productivity, so that maybe in the future, if you find that, if you've using your hypothesis, if you find that it indeed the I mean the social media usage has indeed affected the employee productivity, then the management may come up a plan to maybe disallow the usage of social work during work hours. So when you are doing quantitative research, you are also required your topic to have certain characteristics. For example, your topic should be specific. It should be narrowed down. First of all, when you are coming up with a research to problem or research topic, your research is broad. For example, if you are studying students are broad. Do you mean high school students? Do you mean college students? Do you mean professional, vocational students? So you can narrow down your topic into a specific area, so that you will be able to carry out your research. The other thing that you might need to consider when selecting a topic is to ask if it's possible to study that topic itself. You might find that in many cases that you may select a topic and then at the end of the day you may find that, oh, you don't have a cost because the topic was too broad, or maybe the topic was supposed to be conducted in a different environment that you cannot travel, or maybe because the topic is not applicable in the current setting in this modern world. If you want to study a topic that is related to how people use it, for example, Facebook in 1980, that's impossible to study because in 1980 people were not using internet or Facebook. So you have to also consider the possibility of studying your topic. The other thing you may need to consider when selecting a suitable topic is literature availability. You need to you need to make sure that you don't suffer, okay? You don't create everything from scratch. It's better that you have a rich availability of literature so that you can reflect on it when you are doing your background study. The other thing is the significance, that is the topic significance to so that we can get funds from international donors, or is it significant to certain area of our country or to a specific group of us of the society. So you have to also mention the significance of your topic. And last but not the least, external validity, because in quantitative research, or in most cases, we are studying populations, and to do so, we normally use sampling data to perform some kind of hypothesis that can be generalized to the population. So your research topic should have external validity. It means it should be easily applicable to be generalized to the larger population. The next item in the quantitative research process is the literature review. Of course, this step is going to take most of your time. If you are a student doing academic research, it's better you do this early, maybe in your third year. If your syllabus is 3 year program, you start this one your second year, because this one is going to consume a lot of time. This one you are going to go to your library and read so many books, so many articles, and dig them deeper and try to reflect on what was done in the past that is related to your topic, to your present topic. So you need to only pursue, only go after those literature review that are closely related to your topic, so that you don't waste most of your time. And so in that past literature review, you might find what they have done and how they did it, how it was carried out, and what results were generated. And also the most important thing, what was their conclusion? It is in this conclusion when you will be able to find a gap that may exist in that previous study. So you have to read the conclusion part, so that if they have done everything, then there is no point that you can repeat because they have already accomplished it. But if there is a gap, sometimes they mention it in a separate particular future recommendations, future research. You might find areas that they have left behind and you can take on. After you do that, you need to state your research hypothesis and research variables. In quantitative research, you have two types of methodologies. You can use correlational research, in which you have two variables, two descriptive variables, independent and dependent. You may also have experimental research, in which you have a third variable called a control variable. So you need to state your variables, you need also to define them and the relationship between them, and what is the hypothesis that we are going to test. You have to state that. So you can state the hypothesis after you narrow down your research topic, define your variables, then you can now state your hypothesis. So after that, you can go to methodology, and then you can either choose correlational or experimental research. And then you can also research methods. You can also select tools to conduct your data, and these are data collections and the sampling. All those things will go under the methodology. Then the main part that we are doing this webinar is data analysis and interpretation. Of course, when you are doing quantitative research, you are using statistical analysis to test your research hypothesis, whether it can be validated or whether it needs to be rejected and maybe tuned further or modified. And then after you do the analysis using, for example, SPSS and appropriate statistical technique, you can present your findings and report results. So when talking about statistical data analysis, we are only talking about the last three parts, right? We collect data, we analyze the data, and then after finishing the analysis, we present the results and then interpret to reach conclusion. So for data analysis, let's take a few examples and see how statistical analysis are applied to answer quantitative research questions. So here I have three research topics to give you just an example of how the thing is really working. The first topic I have assessment on the effect of Facebook on exam grades of Form 4 students. Here I narrow down my research topic because social media I'm talking about only Facebook, and students I'm talking about only Form 4 students. Then I develop research question like this, and then I need to decide in the methodology chapter, especially data analysis, which statistical analysis is appropriate for my research question. So if you look here, if you look at this research question, does the use of Facebook has an effect on exam score for 4 students? So Form 4 is grade 2 alif of high school. Then what are now our variables? One variable is exam score. That's one variable. Good. And because we are talking about the effect of the use of Facebook on exam score, we can group our sample into two. We can divide our sample or population into two. One group use Facebook before the exam. So this is like an experimental research. We subject one group to use Facebook, and then we deny the other group to use the Facebook. Then after exam preparation, they sit down, do the exam, and then we record their exam scores. And then we compare the two groups if there is a difference or if they are the same. Because we have divided our population or sample into two groups, use Facebook or does not use Facebook, we can use something called independent sample test. We use independent because we have two groups. One group they use Facebook and then we record their exam score. The other group they don't use Facebook and then we record their exam score. So each group there are different people, there are different students. That's why we call it independent. The samples are not the same, they are independent. So that's how you can, for example, the easiest way I can explain to you how you can develop which statistical analysis is appropriate for your research. Now if you look the next one in the middle, a study on correlation between university reputation and number of enrolled students. Because we developed this research topic because the number of universities in our country are increasing. So we need to rank the universities in terms of maybe research and development, maybe facilities and accreditations and so on. And then we need to see if there is a correlation between the reputation of each student of each university and the number of registered students. So the correlation could be positive correlation and then or it may be negative. So this may be our research question. Because we are doing correlation, we can use Spearman rank correlation. You may ask, why don't you use Pearson correlation? If you look now, what are now our variables? Your variables will tell you which statistical analysis. So we have university reputation. So university reputation is ordinal variable. You can rank from highest to lowest, and they are just labels. So you have one variable which is ordinal, and the number of enrolled students are numerical 50, 100, 1000. So whenever you have one variable ordinal and another variable continuous scale, Spearman is better than Pearson correlation. The last one, we are studying association between income and education level. Of course, this topic is very broad, it's not narrow, because which people are you talking about and which place, which environment. So you can refine this topic. This is not a good topic. Then because every time I'm talking about association between two categorical variables, I can go to chi-square hypothesis test. So this is just a brief explanation of how you are going to go when you wanted to do statistical analysis in your quantitative research. So having said that, let's look and see again how are we going to do the sampling? How can we get a representative sample from a certain population? So what we are going to do is that in quantitative research, you need to be using these three types. There is a fourth one called a cluster, but I have discussed only these three types. Each one has advantage and disadvantage, and all those three types you can do in for example, using SPSS. Of course, I have placed more explanation on this book. You can get my new book on Amazon with this ISBN. It is a statistical guide for students and researchers, and it is illustrating using SPSS. I think it's very good. It's a very good book, very easy to read and very short. So you can go this ISBN and learn how to do these three types in deeply. So the next is what are the different ways data collection can be performed? So because right now we are focusing on quantitative, we can go a telephone interview, for example, uh, in a structured interview whereby you can go along the streets and you can stop people passing by there and then you can ask questions and then you can take or write their responses. So that's one way you can also do online quizzes using maybe your website or social media. You can also run closed-ended questionnaire. You can Likert scale. So Likert scale when you are doing research talking about behavior or what you call attitudes people attitudes of people, you can use Likert scale. So I have also illustrated a few examples of some of them on the book. And you can, the other question is using this tool is what research instruments can you use to use this data collection techniques? You can use Google Forms, Microsoft Forms, you can use the best I think I recommend is to use SurveyMonkey because SurveyMonkey you can run it on your website or Facebook, and then after they collect your data, they also do some descriptive statistics, and they generate a very beautiful data. So you need to go to SurveyMonkey when you are doing your research. You can even email to, if you have email list, you can send the SurveyMonkey questionnaire to your email list. So after data is collected, how are we going to analyze it? So this is our main focus in this webinar. When doing data analysis, we can use this technique is hypothesis tests. You can, it depends where, if you are analyzing one sample, if you are analyzing two sample, or if you are analyzing more than two samples. So all are included here. So in fact, the reason why we are using this hypothesis is that when we wanted to study population, we use sample, right? So when we are using the sample, what we find from the analysis only applies to the sample. Then we hypothesize and find, for example, the p-value or whatever other metric, and then we can generalize that to the population. So that is the hypothesis test. The null hypothesis or the alternative, you are just deciding whether the sample findings can be generalized to the population or under study. So hypothesis, we have two groups, parametric and non-parametric. Of course, parametric, you are assuming that your data, especially the dependent variable, is normally distributed. The non-parametric is when this assumption is violated. So more all of these, using theory, understanding theoretically, and using SPSS practically, can be found on this concise book, which is very cheap on Amazon. So let's see how we can get, for example, all this analysis under SPS. So I go to my SPSS program, and the way you do is that we will talk about how to enter the data and how to tabulate your table like this. So you go to analysis. Everything you want to do in statistical analysis are here. So you can go to correlation, and then you can find the relationship between the variables. You can go to regression, and then you can find the prediction, if there is a regression, if one variable can be predicted from another variable. And then you can also go to groups. For example, if you have one sample, two samples, or more than two samples, you can go to ANOVA. So if you wanted to go to non-parametric tests, you can also run them here. They are all here. If you want to run descriptive statistics, you can find it here. For example, crosstab is where you can use when you are testing high association between categorical variables. And so we will see it in a moment via one example. Let me come back to here. So you need to learn all these statistical tests to perform quantitative data analysis. You need to understand them, the theory behind each one, and also how to run it in SPSS and interpret the outcome of the SPSS. So I recommend you to get here this book. It explains everything in a very easy way with a clear examples. So when you are running the statistical analysis in SPSS, there are certain steps that you need to follow. You need to first do data entry, and the way you do that is first to create variable. So you are testing the relationship between two variables, so you create them, and then you can specify the scale, the measurement scale that you want to use, and then you can even give them a label. And if your variable is ordinal, you need to do some new coding, which I explain it here. So the way you do coding is that before you do the coding, I think here we understood the steps. You go to data entry, and you perform data entry, or if you have large data, you can import from Excel, for example. Then before you go to hypothesis test, first you need to run descriptive statistics to see uh, certain characteristics of your sample data, like the mean, and then maybe bar chart plots. Then you can run statistical analysis using parametric or non-parametric. Then you obtain results and then you interpret. So let's take one example and see how this goes on. Our topic is television rating study. We wanted to study the rating because we have maybe 10 or 20 television stations in our city, and all of them they air to popular programs, politics and history. So we wanted to study if there is association between those TV channels and age groups of the population. So we divide the population into different age groups, and TV channels we have two, history and politics, and then we want to see if there is association between them. So the researcher who is going to perform this research chooses quantitative research because we are talking about association, and then he randomly selects 200 people using similar random sample, and then he designs this closed-ended questionnaire where he collects his data. These are now our two interested variables. Usually when you are when you are designing a questionnaire, always include factual information. These two variables, gender and address, they are factual. They don't affect the analysis. They are not the variables under a study, but they provide further information. For example, when you are writing the methodology chapter of your research, you need to provide some descriptive statistics about the sample. Like for example, right now this variable age we have under 20. So you can say under 20 maybe 50 were male or 50 were. So these factual variables they always provide further information, but they do not affect the statistical analysis, the hypothesis test. So then you collect this data. This is now the data we have. After sending out this questionnaire to a lot of people, then they fill it, and this is what we have. We got 200 responses. After that, now it's when you need to do data entry in SPSS and do coding for variables that are not numerical or on continuous scale. So here the way you are going to do it. For example, we have TV program, politics and history. They are nominal. They don't represent any number. So instead of doing data entry using this name, it's better to code so that you convert them to numerical. So maybe for politics we assign 0, history 1. Then this is the way you are going to code using SPSS. After you code, then you perform some descriptive analysis. For example, if you look this bar chart, because our data is categorical, it's not continuous, bar chart is the most appropriate. Now you see the legend. The yellow is politics channel, the green is history channel. So from this bar chart, you can now see that people who are above 30, they prefer green channel, which is going to be history. But look here, people under 20, they prefer yellow, which is political. So from this bar chart now you can see there is an association. But remember, this association only applies to the sample we have right now. It cannot be generalized to the population like this. That's why we need to perform hypothesis tests to see, because it holds for our sample. Does it hold true for our population? That will be answered by the hypothesis test. So the way you are going to do a hypothesis test, we have our research hypothesis, which is there is an association between politics and history channel preferences and viewer age at the population level, because we have seen there is an association at the sample level. We can say that okay, at the population level we can hypothesize that it also true, there is also an association. Then we run this hypothesis test. So in SPSS, what you are going to do is that, or you are first going to compute the sample statistic, and then in every study that you are doing, you are going to specify the significance level that you are going to be using, or alpha, and then you can compute the p-value. So then you compare alpha and p-value, and then based on that you can either accept the null hypothesis or reject it. So if, for example, in this study we have selected 5% significance level, and then you can we say that when we are talking about association, we can run chi-square association test, and then this is the decision criteria. You need to accept the alternative or such hypothesis if the p-value is less than half. So we have rejected because it's less than that. We have rejected null hypothesis. We can accept the alternative, or sometimes call it research hypothesis. And then you can, once you run, you can get this output from the SPSS. You can run it using this command, this way, and then you will find that the p-value is this one. Then you compare it with your significance level, because right now the p-value is less than the significance level, which was 0.05. Then this provides evidence to support the research hypothesis. So that's the way you are. So this is the sample statistic. This is the statistic time 0.95, and then this is the p-value is compared with the selected alpha value or significance level. Now, if we go to SPSS again, you can find the categorical association test under Analyze menu, and then you can go to Descriptive Statistics, and then you can go Cross tab. And then you can place your two variables there, and then you can select the chi-square test here, and then you run everything. So you will find the chi-square test results under here, and then you can analyze like the way we are doing it in here. So that's how you can really run statistical hypothesis test in SPSS when you are doing quantitative research. If you wanted to learn more about these concepts and how and understand them better in a very easy way, I recommend you to go to my new book on Amazon again, and it talks about all the parametric tests and non-parametric tests you need in order to perform your quantitative research in a very easy way. And it really illustrates all these concepts in using relevant examples with real life applications. And actually this is where we can now end our webinar. And if you don't have any questions, we are going to wrap it up. And thank you for attending, and see you. Bye bye.